In to another episode of the Young Terps podcast. Ahmed Gafir and Mason Viner. Instant reactions after the Terps take down Indiana 44-17. Ahmed, we've been calling for a complete game, and I think today we finally got it.
Yeah, I think it was obviously, a complete first half that really just kind of helped Maryland solidify an early lead going into the locker room with a 27-3 lead. And really we're just kind of able to control momentum since then. Indiana was obviously able to open the game and end the game with red zone scores, the first being a field goal, the second being a touchdown. But aside from that, really felt like on all three sides of the ball, Maryland just was clearly the better team tonight.
Yeah, and if you listen to us really at any point this season, I think one thing has been clear that both of us have constantly said, which is if this offensive line can block, the weapons are there, the execution just has to follow. And today, Ty Felton, huge game, 3 touchdowns. Caden Prather finishes off his day with a touchdown. Ja'Shawn Jones starts it off strong for the Terps. They have so many weapons on offense, and given Indiana's probably on the way down in terms of a program, but these are the games you look for Maryland to really show up and just be the better team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we kind of talked about it. I think, again, it goes back to, the Terps versus Terps, it's just kind of how Maryland expects to play versus how they play. And I think we all kind of expected Maryland to say, hey, on paper, this is definitely a dominant team. But you mentioned Ty Felton, obviously, having a career game, his first 100-yard receiving game in a Maryland uniform. Him and Ja'Shawn Jones were able to finish with over 100 receiving yards, becoming the first set of Maryland receivers to finish with 100 or more yards in the same game since the Michigan State game back in 2021. And then Taulia Tagovailoa, obviously adding 6 touchdowns, including 5 through the air, and the 5 through the air ended up being the most passing touchdowns since Scott Milanovic did so back in '94.
Yeah, and those are records that he just keeps stacking up. I believe he crossed the 9,000 yard career mark
quarterback to do so
today, and just keeps on stacking up those accolades and puts up a Caleb Williams-esque stat line on the day because he also adds 1 rushing touchdown to go with that. Elsewhere on offense, let's talk a little offensive line. It's almost an obligation this year on this pod that we talk about it. A lot less rotation today. Still see 2 centers in the game, and of course Kyle Long really cementing in what is turning into a playable offensive line.
Yeah, I think he's been doing well. Corey Bullock was a guy that was a little bit unsure just kind of going into the game. He missed the open portion of practice earlier this week, but he was able to slide back in, fill in as that guard there. And I think offensive line, did a really good job protecting Taulia. I thought Taulia also did a really good job just evading pressure, was smart with the football. That was his best performance, but the offensive line just kind of through 5 weeks, done really well. And I thought, Maryland's defense obviously was able to get into the backfield, but very minimal negative plays for Maryland's offense.
Is this Taulia's best game, do you think?
Definitely best game of the season. Is it all time? It's probably up there. It's probably top 3, I'd say. I'd probably still put maybe the Ohio State game last year, even though it was a loss. I thought he did well and did everything to really give Maryland a chance there. But I think, again, just the efficiency I think that he was able to able to complete the game with. Again, like you talked about with Ty Felton, with Ja'Shawn Jones, it just really felt like Taulia was able to find all his receivers in stride. Wasn't the same type of numbers in terms of skilled players coming down with the ball like we've seen last week, for example, 11 different players, 10 different receivers with at least 1 pass, with at least 1 catch. We only saw really Caden Prather. He was that third receiver where he was able to find some success, but Ty Felton, I think he was kind of the beneficiary of just being able to be that third wide receiver. Shout out to my guy on Inside the Black and Gold, John Diggs, who called it in his 3 keys to victory in Saturday's game. But again, I just think Ty Felton, when you touched on it earlier, just his career game, I think just his big playability, I think fans saw it, but his ability to have that breakout performance while Ja'Shawn Jones still opened the game with a 62-yard reception, catch and run. Caden Prather's been able to show it as well. Just feels like that wide receiver room was, through these first 5 weeks, has really been able to show that explosiveness now.
And if you go and you listen to what Mike Locke had to say after this game, when he talks about the brotherhood of this team and being down on the field, getting some really good video that you can check out from today's game, you can see it. When a guy scores in this team, everybody in the entire offensive unit is up there congratulating with them. They all have celebration dances, handshakes. You can really see the team kind of come together, which is something that Locke has talked about in his time here, them not necessarily having and now you really see it in full effect.
Yeah, and I regretted it in the moment not being able to capture video of it, but when they announced Deshaun Jones, when he eclipsed the 1,500 career receiving yards, I immediately looked down, saw the bench. Deshaun Jones was sitting there, Ty Felton, Robert Smith, a bunch of the other receivers, I believe Kane Breather was there too, but just all kind of jumping around, celebrating with them. And again, like you said, it's not something you've seen back, hell, like even 2019, 2021, you saw shades of it, but it just feels like that, this is year 5. This is Loxley's program. This is all Loxley's guys, predominantly Loxley's guys. And you're starting to see that culture really soak through.
Let's talk some defense.
Yep.
I think this one just goes in now what is a large stack of what's probably going to make Brian Williams a lot of money this offseason, because I will tell you, this defense is one of the best that I've seen, if not the best I've seen in my time here watching Maryland. And they got the NFL guys, and you're starting to see with Caleb Wheatland, especially on the edge, they're starting to have the pass rush to bring it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we talked about just kind of limiting Jalen Lucas a little bit. And Maryland was really largely able to do so. Obviously, was able to find some success there, finishing the day with, 7 carries for 28 yards. So again, when he came into the game with second in the Big Ten in all-purpose yards, thought Maryland did really well there. That front seven, again, Deshaun Barham, he was a guy that didn't have the Black and Gold subscriber, as I mentioned. He was there for practice on Tuesday, but wasn't going through drills. He was able to warm up today, didn't end up going through, and you still really didn't feel like there was much of a drop-off with that linebacker room. Fanaji Gote coming down with his first interception of the season, second of the year, so just a lot of success there.
Yeah, that linebacker room right now is something that is really good to watch, given that it was I think one of the biggest weaknesses for many years coming into this one. But a guy like Ruben Hippolyte still holds it down, while possibly your best inside linebacker, Jashawn Parham, is out. Gote, there's no drop-off to. Spraggins, if you talk about a guy that's made a jump year over year, his jump this year has been fantastic. Obviously, Wheatland, they're starting to use him more on the outside, but he can still go inside. And then Mike Harris, who's getting garbage time minutes, but looks like he's a top-tier athlete as a freshman.
Yeah, you can just really see, when Harris is on the field, it's hard to miss him. He's just very explosive, feels like he's just always able to find himself around the ball. And again, impressive. I mentioned he was able to kind of flash that athleticism really ever since he enrolled back in June. And even with a deep linebacker room, Daniel Wingate able to make some plays in the closing minutes there again. But again, I thought Christian Teague did a really good job as well in interior run support. Some of those short yardage situations, Trey Colbert as well. And then obviously just being able to Ruben Hippolyte, just being able to fly around the ball and whatnot. So again, just a really complete game. And I think, Cam Camper was a guy at the receiver position where you wanted to see, how Jaquan Shepard did. And I thought largely, in those one-on-one 50-50 balls, and man, I thought he did was able to really hold his own.
Yeah, and I think looking at, again, taking steps forward with this defense, you played against a quarterback that wanted to get outside the pocket today. Everybody stayed in their rush lane. The contain, for the most part, was held. It created sacks. It created tackles for loss for this defense. And look, Indiana's definitely got some soul searching to do. I think anybody that watched the game saw that a team that was struggling, a quarterback that really was lacking the ability to push the ball down the field. But if you followed this team in this program, taking advantage of that and finishing the game in the first half, finishing the game by the third quarter, you could have basically left and not looked at your phone again and had any concern about what the final score would be. You haven't seen that much in this stadium.
No, I would agree with that. And I do think that, obviously Tom Allen, he's been with that program, been at the helm of the program for a while now. And I just think, they're kind of in that transition year where they're trying to just bring in a lot of new talent and try to build it up with some of these transfers. It's not really working out. We'll see, how long that leash is there. But in terms of Maryland, goes back to those, 50-50 games, just even 2 years ago, the Illinois game and whatnot, and back in the COVID season, just there were a lot of chances where in the past where you said, can Maryland did it? Can Maryland pull this off? Which Maryland team will show up? Granted, the first 4 out of the 5 games of the season have been at home, and I do think obviously it's a very strong chance for you to find those fast starts, find your groove when you're at home. But Maryland was able to do so last week against Michigan State. Just a really convincing performance, and again, feels like it just kind of goes back to as long as Maryland plays to what we've seen them capable of playing, 9 times out of 10 they will be a better team this year.
Yeah, special teams, a bit of some struggles there today. They give up the big kickoff return on the first of the game. It seemed like, I'm not sure if many people caught this at the end of the game, Loxley getting into it with some of the coaches on the sideline. They weren't able to figure out what combos they wanted to get on the last kickoff, and I think really, unfortunately, we have a kicking problem with Jack House.
Yeah, it's and I was just talking about it with someone because even last week against Michigan State, missed a 29-yarder, missed a 40-yarder, and it was a 48-yarder. Today he made a 44-yarder and then had a 44-yarder blocked, missed an extra point. So, there are some obvious concerns. There isn't as much reliability in the kicking game in that aspect as there was a season ago with Chad Ryland. And I think, Jack House did a good job just kind of throughout the offseason. Loxley talked about it heading into the season, bringing in the former Eastern another transfer portal kicker to kind of compete with Jack House there. And Jack was still able to kind of hold on to that starting job. So I think it's kind of all about consistency. We'll be interested to go back on the tape to see maybe what kind of caused or what was the reason for that missed second attempt.
Yeah, I think he's really struggling on the left hash. He's really, if you go back and you look at his last kicks, he's really trying to drive that ball, and I think it is the left hash. That's where it's coming from. They got to probably position him better for success, put him where he wants to be on the field because he's still a young kicker and a guy that the Virginia game, they're trying him from 50-plus yards. So maybe he's not quite there where they can do that, but he definitely has to make the 40-plus yard kicks.
Yeah, and like you said, he's a young guy. He's a redshirt sophomore, so give him a chance and be the guy. But I think obviously being able to get some consistency in that phase, I think that was probably maybe the biggest concern kind of coming out of this win.
Yeah, 38,181 your crowd today here at CQ Stadium. Ahmed, final takes on this one and looking ahead to Ohio State.
Again, even though my bets didn't hit and I picked Maryland to win between 13 and 18 points, I'll gladly take a 27-point win. I think this Maryland team, Loxley talked about just kind of what they've been able to do and just kind of how dominant that they've been. And even though that they haven't been able to find their, it's not a finished product, there still is, strides to go, improvements to be made. It just feels like this is a Maryland team that's largely being able to stay disciplined. We'll see, obviously Caden Prather, he went down earlier, was able to come back. It'll be interesting to see, just how severe Tarheeb still, how he's doing going into next week as well. But again, overall, I just think going into the first big test of the season, Maryland has passed so far.
Yeah, we'll say, and it's worth bringing up, it was a topic during one of the press conferences that Locks had earlier. The penalties are gone.
Yeah.
We're seeing a much cleaner product. I think that, as fans and people that cover the team, it's really frustrating to just watch them shoot themselves in the foot. You're not seeing that this year. People are engaged in the game that come out to it. I think the overall vibe around the program is just in a much better spot than from where Loxley took over from last year. You're seeing that year-over-year improvement, and hopefully we're talking Tuesday night back here on the podcast about a ranked matchup between Maryland and Ohio State in Columbus.
Yeah, feels inevitable for Maryland to be to add 2 digits in front of that name. So yeah, we shall see.
They certainly had the performance for it. For all the game coverage, check out InsideTheBlackandGold.com. Make sure to subscribe and like this podcast so you catch all of our game previews and post-game pods. And as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.